Hey gang, Troy W. Hudson, the voiceover with personality. How y'all doing today? Yes. Where the heck were you, buddy? Yeah, it was AWOL. I forgot what it stood for. Absent without leave or absent without a live, something like that. Yeah, I missed the stew last week. What can I say? I had life going on, and it was the first time I've missed the stew in, since I started back, I think on June 18th or 19th of last year, and it just honestly wasn't a priority. Had a family reunion / first birthday party celebration down in the Charleston, South Carolina area. All of the kids, all of the grandkids, all of the spouses and significant others, all of them in one place, one big location, one big party atmosphere. And, you know, it was 5 o'clock rolled around and I looked at my phone and, no, wasn't going to happen. Did not want to be distracted. I was encouraged to do it. I even had some cohorts that would have helped me. But in the end, it was time to open presents and just bask in the wonder and magnificence of watching all those family members in one place. For the first time in, goodness, I don't know how long it's been. But it was a wonderful, wonderful, good Friday. Speaking of Good Friday, today is the day. If you are a Christian like me, and you call Jesus your Lord and Savior, then today is a very big day in our faith and for the entire world, honestly, because today is recognized. I know it floats every year and it rotates in and out in the springtime, but today is recognized as the day of Jesus's crucifixion on the cross. And coming up at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, I normally do a story time with Troy for the kids. And today is no exception. I also missed story time last week, but I was there with the actual grandkids, so I told them a story. So it was kind of like I was there, or here, but not really. So coming up at 6 Eastern, story time with Troy will be a little different because it will be the story of Easter. And again, it can be quite intense for the little ones to kind of understand. So I found a site called whyeaster.com, and there's some wonderful illustrations on there, and it tells the story. It doesn't water it down, but it also does it with some different imagery because, you know, let's face it, when most of us think of Easter, we think of Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie from about 20 some odd years ago, and the incredibly graphic and intense and just gut-wrenching scenes that depict in such stark reality the significance of what he went through for you and for me and for the sins of all mankind. And it just, that's in most cases too intense for the audience that I talk to at 6 o'clock. So I found a site called whyeaster.com. A gentleman by the name of James Cooper put it up there, and so I'm giving him credit for this. Obviously, God came up with the story, but James rewrote it and put the illustrations there. And my lovely bride-to-be, Tammy, found some additional illustrations that I will include in the story as well from different sites. So it's going to be very impactful. So if your kids have never heard the story of Easter, not the bunny stuff. That ain't Easter, folks. The story of Easter or Good Friday and the significance of it, leading on into Resurrection Sunday, actual Easter Sunday, then I encourage you to have them join. And it's going to be live, but of course it'll be recorded on YouTube and on my personal Facebook page. So there you go, coming up at 6, Story Time with Troy. But for now, it is the VoiceOver Weekly Stew. And I asked you earlier how you've been. I've been kind of busy, but not like a crazy madman. I actually took Friday off last week to go to the party and hang out. So it was like a 3-day weekend. Didn't do any work. It was quite lovely, I might say. And let me just pop in and show you my calendar. My calendar looks like that for this week. Most of that there. Monday was a crazy day coming back. Actually, yeah, that's right. That's Monday. And then there's Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and followed by Thursday, and of course Friday. So some e-learning mixed in there. If you notice all the red blocks down in the afternoon, that was all video editing for the University of South Carolina College of Social Work that I'm doing animation work for. So yeah, that has kept me busy, quite busy, and it will through a good part of April and May. So yeah, my goodness, we are into a brand new month, aren't we? April 2nd, 2021. My, what a year, what a difference a year makes. A different year makes a difference too. 2020 compared to 2021. We didn't know what was going to be going down, did we? Early April, we were thinking, a little blip and then we'll be cool. I talked with a gentleman yesterday on a project I had promoted that I was going to be part of for Samaritan's Purse as a voice talent for a worldwide discipleship program last year. I had posted it on my social media, but really couldn't specifically reference what it was. Well, they were set back big time. The producer called me and said, we have some additional work for you to do coming up next week because we're going to be rolling this thing out. They have been a lot of people, including this producer, were affected by COVID. This particular gentleman I was working with that sent me the voiceover assignment for Samaritan's Purse, where I play the voice of an airplane named Sam. That's all I can say. The rest of it, I just have to wait for them to roll out and then put it out there. But he said it's going to have huge distribution all over the world. It ties in directly with Operation Christmas Child and other discipleship programs they've got for kids. So I'm super excited to know that I'm going to be a part of that. But the producer said that he said, how you been? And I said, well, I had a little bout, I don't think it was COVID back in August. And he proceeded to tell me of this horrific story of dealing with it from Thanksgiving all the way into January, February for him, and just a real severe case. And it just brought me back to the whole understanding and recognition that some people have really had a difficult time dealing with it. And even into 2021, New Year's didn't. A lot of people were like, I'm done with 2020. Here we go, 2021. People were still and are still dealing with it. Thankfully, he says, and he knows that he is immune to it now because he had to deal with a very severe case of it. So happy to know that he was doing well and he was sending me more assignments and that he was on the mend. Of course, that's the main thing. So because it is Good Friday, I wanted to center a couple of the highlighted projects I've got on Christian-related projects. And lo and behold, my good buddy Shane Leonard at Solid Rock Studios up there in West Virginia, I know that's not how you say it, but I'm going to say West Virginia. Which way would it be? It would be north of here because we're down in South Carolina. Anyway, Shane, I know he doesn't talk like that. Shane Leonard, he does some amazing film work. I can tell you that. Tells some great stories. And he's working with a church called Vertical Church. And he's produced a series of 16 different videos. And he asked me after showing me the bumper, which is basically the teaser or the trailer, for the 16 stories that they've been showing in this church, of the amazing way God has worked in people's lives. He asked me if I would produce the voiceover for the bumper, and I watched it a couple of times, got chills watching it. Then he sent me a story of what it actually involved, an amazing story, and I knew that I was glad I waited a day and kind of processed it, and then opened the mic, and then looked at it, and then read the voiceover part of it. So I want to pop out of here, go to YouTube real quick. I got to mute my mic when I do. Bear with me for just a second, and I will show you the bumper to the Vertical Stories feature on YouTube. stories worth telling. Stories worth laughing. Stories worth crying. These are our stories. These are God's stories, where the gospel transforms lives. Vertical Stories. So, yeah, I still get chills, that piano music and those people, because I've seen one of the younger guy that I think it was before that last gentleman that sat down. Shane sent me his story, and it was just incredibly impactful. He had a very rough life, and God miraculously saved him. He was basically dead on an overdose. And someone found him and revived him and got him the help he needed and completely turned his life around. He's involved in a men's group in church at Vertical. And just, I talked to Shane about, the amazing blessing that it is to work on a project like that, to work with a church like that wants to tell those human stories. Because, folks, everybody has a story. Everybody has an amazing story to tell. And it's so impactful when you can see the influence of God in their lives when they were at the end of their rope. And so I was very blessed to just be a little part of that, to be able to do the voice for the bumper. Please don't knock over things, puppies, as you leave. And there go the Goldens. So yeah, now I want to share with you something I did a few years ago for Bible Pathway Adventures. And basically what it is a story called He is Risen, or The Risen King is what this story is actually is. It was for Bible Pathway Adventures, a kid's story that I had the honor of telling, again on YouTube. And I will only play it up to a certain point because of the length of the whole story. But it's very impactful. The drawings were done by a great artist named Thomas Barnett. And the story was written by Pip Reed. And again, it is copyright Bible Pathway Adventures. I produced the VO, I think 4 or 5 years ago, then followed up by putting the illustrations into video format so they could share it on their website. If you get the opportunity, check the whole story out, BiblePathwayAdventures.com. The YouTube channel has it, and I believe their site still has the story up as well. This is the beginning of The Risen King. He has risen, just as he said. This is when things break and you got to go back and fix them. All right, here we go. I'm going to Firefox now on my browser, and I'm going to try this again. Matthew 28:6. Pilate, the Roman governor, rose to his feet and faced the crowd. "Whom do you want me to set free?" he asked. "Barabbas or Yeshua, the King of the Jews?" Once a year, the Roman governor freed a prisoner chosen by the people. "Crucify Yeshua! Crucify Yeshua! Crucify Yeshua!" the crowd shouted back. Stirred up by religious leaders from the temple, the crowd began to riot. Pilate had to act fast. "Take this man to Golgotha and crucify him," he thundered. The religious leaders smiled.
They did not like how this teacher from Galilee spoke against their man-made rules and traditions. Their wicked plan to get rid of him had worked. The Roman soldiers placed a wooden beam on Yeshua's back and led him through the city streets. The Passover was about to begin, and Jerusalem was filled with visitors. They pushed their way forward, eager to catch a glimpse of this famous teacher. Beaten and weary, Yeshua fell to his knees and dropped the heavy wooden beam on the ground. When the soldiers saw that he could go no further, they picked a man named Simon from out of the crowd and told him to carry the beam to Golgotha. Judas bowed his head in grief. He had hoped with all his heart that Yeshua would be the one to overthrow the Romans. He did not understand the scriptures that showed the Messiah would first come as a suffering servant. He had expected him to come as a conquering king like King David. "I have betrayed my master," he cried. "He has done nothing wrong." Grabbing the money the religious leaders had paid him, Judas hurried to the temple. He burst into the courtyard and threw 30 silver coins on the ground. "I have sinned and betrayed an innocent man." The religious leaders glanced at Judas and then turned away. "This is your problem," they said. "You decided to betray him." Full of confusion, Judas fled from the temple and killed himself in a field. After Judas had left, the chief priests picked up the silver coins. "This is blood money," they stated, "and it is against our law to put it in the temple treasury." They took the money and bought a field to use as a place to bury foreigners. It became known as the Potter's Field. A large crowd followed Yeshua to a place just outside the city walls that was called Golgotha. Golgotha was where soldiers nailed people to a stake for disobeying the Roman rulers. This horrible punishment was known as crucifixion. Stripping off Yeshua's clothes, the Roman soldiers nailed his wrists to the wooden beam. Then they drove iron nails through his ankles to pin him to a wooden stake. These two pieces of wood formed a cross. Using ropes, the soldiers lifted the cross upright with Yeshua upon it until he was high off the ground. Beside him, they crucified a murderer and a robber, one on his right side and the other on his left. Above his head, they placed a sign that said, "This is the King of the Jews." Yeshua's enemies scowled at the sign. They did not believe he was the king of anyone. They went to Pilate and said, "Do not say he was the king of the Jews." But Pilate shook his head. He knew the religious leaders were jealous of this teacher from Galilee. "What I have written stays written," he told them. That morning, people from near and far came to Jerusalem with their lambs for the Passover sacrifice. As they reached the city walls, many of them stopped and laughed at Yeshua. "You are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days?" they said. "Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." Others stared at Yeshua in disbelief. They thought he had come to overthrow the Romans and become the king of Israel, but instead he had been beaten and crucified. The people turned away and headed into the city, unable to look at the terrible sight. The religious leaders came to mock him too. "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. Let us see the King of Israel come down from the cross now." The soldiers and robber insulted him in the same way. "If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us." But the murderer defended Yeshua, saying, "He has done nothing wrong." Yeshua said to him, "I tell you this day, you will be with me in paradise." Even though his enemies made fun of him, Yeshua still loved them and was willing to die for their sin. In great pain, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." At midday, a strange darkness fell over Jerusalem. For 3 hours the sun did not shine. At the temple, priests blew the shofars to announce the start of the Passover sacrifices. The heavy gates swung open, and thousands of people with lambs ready for slaughter poured into the temple courts. The Passover sacrifices continued at the temple all afternoon. The priests sacrificed so many lambs that no one could count them all. Outside the city, Yeshua hung silently on the cross and did not say a word. While the soldiers waited for him to die, they took his clothes and divided them among themselves. All of a sudden, Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, "Elohai, Elohai, lama sabachthani," which meant, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the people mocked him, saying, "Listen, he is calling for the prophet Elijah. Let's see if Elijah will bring him down from the cross." Sometime later, Yeshua said, "I am thirsty." A soldier offered him a sponge soaked in sour wine to drink, but he refused to drink. Then he cried aloud, "My Father, into your hands I place my spirit." He bowed his head and died.
Still gets me every time I hear that story. If you're curious, Yeshua is a Hebrew variation. It actually means Joshua, and then if you actually look up the origin of the word, eventually it becomes a translated word for Jesus. You can look that up and double check it if you like to. The Wikipedia article is very long, but that's where Yeshua comes in, as opposed to Jesus, the English translation of Yeshua, based on the Hebrew. So anyway, but just to let you know, of course, the story does not end there. That's just the beginning. That was the end of the on earth man, Son of Man ministry of Jesus, but it was not the end of the story. If you don't know the end of the story, I encourage you to go to BiblePathwayAdventures.com, look up what happens next. I'll actually put a link in the, probably on the YouTube page, for those interested in wanting to see the rest of the story. It's about 16 minutes more than this, and it goes all the way through what we would recognize as Resurrection Sunday. It just gets better. It does get so good because God is so good. And that's really all I've got today. I need to prep for story time with Troy because it'll be a little bit different. Again, just a reminder, we'll be doing, let me bounce back out here to Firefox.
Part 2. Around Jerusalem.
We're not doing part 2. Thank you. We're doing, where did it go? Where did it go? Sorry, I was muted. The full story, the Easter story, whyeaster.com is the website. If you'd like to follow along, I think is what I was trying to say. You can do that, or just join me at 6 for story time with Troy, and it's going to be an amazing story. It is the greatest story ever told. So that's all I got for you guys. You guys be blessed, be a blessing, and have an amazing Easter weekend. We'll see you next time.